So let me just close this so that I can see you guys. There we go. Hi, number one, thank you for coming. Where to start? We have a few people who are sort of dropping in and out, who both teach on the course, and also we've got a bunch of students who have graduated a few years ago, one from 1 year ago, and then we've got Jasmin joining the call in a little bit, who is currently on the course. So you can also hear a little bit from them and ask them a few questions. Um, but I thought probably the best thing to do is just to start with a bit of an overview. Also, before I do begin, I was just explaining to the people on the call, I'm deaf in one ear today. I had earplugs in when I was sleeping and sneezed, and something's happened. So if you ask a question and I don't hear you, please, I apologize for asking people to repeat things 9 times. I just can't hear out of one side of my head. Um, so the first thing is the format I thought would be really useful to talk about. So for those of you who don't know, the training is split over sort of 2 bits, and we start with an immersion week in Surrealila in Spain. I don't know if any of you have been to Surrealila, but it is a beautiful part permaculture farm now, and also retreat centre that's been going for about 11 or 12 years. And we have done the immersion week of the training there every year since I think 2020, because we were somewhere else the first couple of times. And it's beautiful, and it's in the middle of nowhere, about an hour outside of Seville. So we split that and do the immersion week there, and then we have these 7 weekends in London, one a month. And the reason we did that is because but when Marcus used to teach on this as well, the two of us had done our trainings in a very intensive 1 month period away. And actually, Dan, you were in my year, weren't you? So you also did it at the same time, which is great in many ways, in that you get to be completely immersed in it and away from the London life and the stresses of whatever you're doing and your job, and you can really focus. But that's a lot to do in 1 month. It isn't much assimilation time. And particularly for anyone who wants to teach at the end of this and who hasn't taught before, it's really not very much time, A, to learn the teaching bit. And also, you only get to teach people who already know what they're doing, because you're just there with everyone else on your course who is also learning to be a yoga teacher. So it has a lot of benefits, but it also doesn't give you that time to just bed it in and practice teaching and just have a longer time to let it assimilate. Equally, I've taught on a lot of trainings, just done modules here and there that are just weekends, some of them every weekend, some of them spread out over about a year, which is great for the assimilation, but you've always got stuff going on in the background. People are flying across London trying to get a tube. It's a bit of a nightmare. There's work commitments at the same time as this. And you just don't get to have that period of time where you can be in your little yoga bubble and just really sit in it. And also, I think there is something really lovely in terms of the community about having that time to be away with all these people you're going to spend the next 7 months learning with and actually get to know people properly. So that's why we split it out a little bit and do a bit of 50-50, just because we found there were so many benefits to both and a few little drawbacks to both. And so, Surilila, we get you teaching from day one. Do not be afraid, mainly just to get over the hurdle. And I mean, you can hear from Claire is smiling. Claire graduated last year, and I can see just from the mention of it. People think it's going to be really frightening, but we do it in a very, very simple way. And it's literally just getting up, having a go, and teaching something very simple on day one. And it just means that you get over it immediately, and then you all do it every single day for the whole week. And it becomes, well, I'm going to say it becomes less frightening. You can hear from the students about whether it becomes less frightening in a second. So that week we get into the philosophy, we get into the ethics, we really sort of bed into everything. And then when we're back in London, it's a bit more spaced out. So we have a lot of guest teachers come in and teach little modules, as well as keeping the thread going of all of the sequence stuff and a lot of the breaking down of postures. So the next thing really I wanted to talk about is just the syllabus and the emphasis we have on the training. You will probably know that there's a lot of emphasis on the psychology of moving to a beat. So there's a lot about music in it, but you don't have to be musical. You don't have to have a musical background. It's more about how helpful it is, both as a teacher and as a practitioner, in terms of focus and in terms of letting somebody else in, sorry. In terms of being able to sort of stay in the practice. And there's a lot of psychology around it that we go into. So we teach it as a tool. And it's one of the things that makes the yoga school a little bit different, that we have this extra emphasis on being able to learn how to teach to a beat so that everything is consistent, and it makes it a little bit easier for you as a teacher, and it makes it a little bit easier for the students to drop in. You don't have to go on to teach that way. And actually, this is a really important thing about the training, is that we are as non-dogmatic as possible. So we want you to take the stuff from the training that you find helpful and keep it, and anything that isn't, you chuck it out, totally fine. So we're always really big on that. But that is one of the sort of main aspects we've lent into, is the experience of moving to a beat and what that does to your brain, and what the coordination of movement and music, whether that is actual music or whether it is the beat of your breath, what that does to your brain as well, and how that affects your body and your nervous system and multiple other things. So that's quite a big part. Accessibility, like proper both physical and neuroinclusive teaching, is a really big part of the syllabus. And Fiona is here somewhere. I think, yes, she is. She's invisible at the moment. Fiona is leading the accessibility module, so she'll talk to you a little bit about that. But also this idea of genuine mixed level teaching, so that you can have a room full of people in front of you if you want to teach at the end of this, which has some quite experienced practitioners, some really new people, and a whole load in the middle, and that you know how to deal with that, and that you can lead people through a practice where they get to teach they get to practice the way they need to and want to. So you give them that choice in the way that you deliver the class, but also everything is still sort of harmonious and under control. So that's one of the main methodology points, I guess, in the way that we teach, is just about how you can allow everyone to do what they need to and let their own body decide what is the right option for them that day, whilst keeping it a really letting someone else in, sorry, keeping it a really shared group experience still. We try to strike a really good balance as much as we can between all of the tradition, the philosophy, the history of the practice, and also the science and a lot of the new research on it. So we have a lot of neuroscience, very accessible neuroscience. We break down what happens in meditation. We break down what moving to a beat does, all of that stuff that I've mentioned. And also trauma-informed practice as well, which is different to yoga for trauma. That's like a whole other thing. But trauma-informed practice, you understand nervous system regulation, all of the elements of the practice that influence that. And Dan is going to talk a little bit about that as well, because his voice module also keys into a lot of nervous system stuff. We have a lot of anatomy. So the brilliant Elodie, who is on a lovely holiday at the moment, so can't join us, but she's great. She's an osteopath as well as a yoga teacher, and she leads the anatomy on the course. So there's a lot of emphasis on that, and it's not just sort of sitting down listening to Elodie. There's a lot of applied anatomy, functional anatomy, and how it actually applies to your teaching and to your practice as well. Just checking I haven't missed anything from my lovely list. No, lovely. So in terms of the guest teachers, so I lead a lot of the course. Elodie teaches the anatomy. Fiona, who will pop up in a second, does an accessibility module and also history of yoga. We've got Cecilia Ballon, who isn't here, who teaches a nervous system module. Shamita Ray, some of you might know, she teaches all around London. She leads a Sanskrit module, which is super interesting, about the history of Sanskrit and the meanings of the words and the letters, which is cool. And then Dan is doing a voice and nervous system module. And then we have Rosie as well, who will pop along later, I think, who does a neuroinclusive lecture. She is an ADHD specialist and talks about how to teach in a really neuroinclusive way, and also how the practice can really help regulation and focus, particularly for people with ADHD as well. There's a lot of emphasis, obviously, on the methodology of the practice itself and the sequence and how to teach, even though you are super welcome if you don't want to teach. And on that note, we can talk to some of the students about this as well. But generally, I would say at the beginning of a training, when we ask how many people are here because they want to teach, it's usually under 50% of the people that actually think, yeah, I want to go and do this in a studio or teach people that I know. usually by the end of the practice or the end of the course, almost everyone wants to teach because I think it becomes such a passion and becomes something that you realize has so much value. And obviously, you realize that already, or you wouldn't be here. But it is amazing to see how quickly people start going, oh, actually, I want to share this. So again, that's not to say that you're not welcome or it's not useful if you just want to deepen your own practice. It really is. But it's always interesting to see how many people flip and kind of go over to that side. Um, in terms of the philosophy and the ethics, we have a lot on that as well. And we do it all, pretty much all, through discussion and through debate. So it's not just lecture based. We have a lot of chats about it, particularly when it comes to the ethical elements of the practice and looking at how we update them and what they mean in the current time as well. That's always really interesting. And I'll send a little email out after this, but if you want to check some of that out, our website has a blog section. And on that blog, almost everything has been written by students because they are little mini essays we get people to do at the end of their course on a topic of their choosing, or we give sort of three options that are around various ethics to do with the practice, modern ethics, or something to do with the philosophy. And there are a whole load of essays up there which are really cool and really interesting, particularly people who brought their own titles. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, I'll send out the link. I'm nearly done with my giant blurb. Don't worry, those of you thinking this is going on forever. Asana, so we break down a lot of poses. So this is where it becomes super useful if you're doing it for your practice and your own development as well. We look at what alignment really means in terms of the misconception of it being that everyone has to look exactly the same in a pose and hit the exact same shape. And we sort of demystify that a little bit and look at this idea of action in a pose rather than everything looking the same. And of course, everyone looks different because everyone's body is different, but understanding what the common actions are of each pose. And we do a lot of breaking down of that. And again, a lot on sort of accessibility and different options for different people. We do some pranayama as well, some breath work, and look not only at ujjayi, which is with vinyasa, because obviously the majority of this training is vinyasa based, but also looking at different breath techniques through the lens of nervous system regulation again, and which ones bring you up, which ones bring you down. A lot of the traditional pranayamas. Meditation. So there's daily meditation. We look at what happens in your brain, specifically with mindfulness meditation as well, and dive into that a little bit of the sort of lighter neuroscience side of it. And then embodiment as well, just general being in the body, nervous system regulation, trauma-informed yoga, as I mentioned, just to be aware when you're teaching of the language you use, really. And then in terms of your sort of continued development, if you do want to go and teach, we have a lot of opportunities for you to come in and assist classes. So you can get your hands on practicing assisting, which is a big part of the course as well. And we have a lot of relationships with a lot of studios in London. So particularly if you're London based, and we have various outposts through the UK from people who've done the course as well. But we have a lot of students now teaching in most of the sort of major studios in London. So sort of a lot in Yoga Rise, Mission, Tri Yoga, Kindred, a lot of more yoga. So we also we know a lot of the people that run them just because we've been around forever. But also there are a lot of our students there who because they're teaching there, it means that people sort of look at the school and go, oh, cool, we know those people. They're normally good. Cool, come in and have an audition, which is great. Um, I think that is the giant rundown done. The only other thing that always comes up is how we assess it. So the terrifying word exam, which we've renamed this year. Hello, Jasmin. Jasmin,
No.
we've renamed it as the big share. So we don't do an exam anymore. We just do a big share at the end. And you teach a practice at the final weekend. Everyone individually teaches the full sequence that you'll have spent 7 months doing. There is a short written assignment, it's a couple of pages, and it's on some ethical or philosophical point of your choosing, or you can choose from one of our little options. And there's an anatomy quiz that Elodie does, which is online, that you can take multiple times until you pass it. And then it's generally just continual assessment throughout, in that, it's very, very rare that we've been worried about somebody in their sort of safety in terms of graduating them. But if in the unlikely circumstance we will always have a conversation with somebody really early on so that people can sort of spend a little bit of extra time. And if there's a particular area that we're worried about, we want you to graduate, and we want you to be the best teacher you can be, and really confident and yourself. So we do everything we can to make that happen. So it's not a big, scary end of course situation. Um, Cool. I think that is almost record time for me getting through all of that. Any questions? I know a few of you are camera off, which is totally cool, but you are very welcome to either turn camera on or like write it in the chat if you want, or just speak. Hi, Rosie. But any questions you have, let me know. We'll come back to some more questions later as well. But I will give it a second, and then I will hand over to Fiona to talk a little bit about the accessibility, and then I will come to you, Rosie. Cool. I'm going to take that as I just described everything so perfectly that there are no questions remaining. Fiona, then over to you, just to sort of intro yourself a little bit and just what you're teaching on the course as well.
Hi. Sorry, first of all, it's so loud. I am out and in a cafe, so if you can hear lots of background noise, apologies. But hello, I'm Fiona, and I have been, I guess, just a bit of background on me. I've been teaching yoga for 7 or 8 years now. I got into it after having had 2 kids as a lawyer in a bank in Hong Kong, and I'm still doing the lawyering. I've still got the kids. I'm teaching yoga on top of that. And I've got a prosthetic leg. So I lost my leg in the tsunami in 2004. So I was very lucky to live and got on with life after that. Was quite sporty, did lots of exercise. But the yoga is the thing that really helped me, I guess, to change my perception of the body and of my body. And yoga in Hong Kong, the yoga that I got into was very like strong yoga. So very similar to the practice that we kind of do here. And I learned a lot, I think, by just osmosis about how to physically make the poses work for my body. So to come to the accessibility part of the training, what I generally teach and how I would teach it is we would do an hour and a half at the outset, lecture-wise, on like what is accessibility and what makes a practice accessible. And the way that I actually got into this practice was during COVID. I decided I was bored of all my Hong Kong teachers, so I'd try a bit of online yoga, and I absolutely fell in love with this practice. And I didn't know why. Like from the first class, I was like hooked, and I found out all the times that it was on, and that would work for the Hong Kong time zone, and did it constantly. And then I learned a little bit more about accessible yoga, and I realized that actually what we teach is accessible. So it's actually very easy to translate this practice into an accessible yoga type framework. And in our lecture, we will go through all of that. So I'll explain to you the elements of an accessible yoga practice, and how this practice fits it, how you can teach behavior-wise, the words that you make, the words that you use, the cues that you give, and then the general kind of atmosphere that you're creating in your yoga room in a more accessible way. And then the second part of the accessibility module will be physical accessibility. So literally, like, how do you adapt the poses in order to make them work for all bodies and all minds? Because it is a strong practice, and once you get into it and you get more used to it, these questions will come to your mind, especially when you start practice teaching. So we do that a little bit further on down the line. And it always amazes me because the sessions can be quite long. We don't get through very much. So I'm always kind of like begging for more. We could talk forever about it once we start getting into the poses. That's the accessibility side of things. And then separately, I'll teach the history of yoga. And I'm a historian, so I did a history degree at university. And I've always been, I guess, fascinated by the whole history of yoga. And that's because it can be often seen as kind of quite a static thing. And there's a lot of, I think, dogma in the yoga world about like, we do this practice in this particular way for these. Well, often there's no reason for it. We do this practice in this particular way. That's the way it is. You have to follow the rules and get on with it. And that's actually the opposite of the way that yoga has evolved over the centuries and the millennia that it's been around for. And for me personally, I just find that fascinating. I find it fascinating how it borrows from many different cultures, and it has done all the way through history, borrowed from many different systems of kind of thought philosophically, and has done all the way through history. The kind of yoga that we actually do today is calisthenics. Like, it's based on like Swedish calisthenics from like the early 1900s, that was adopted by India and the Indian yogis in order to kind of rebrand yoga. So, you know, as the years have gone by, I just find it super fascinating, and hopefully you will find it too, and it is the same, and it will give you a good idea of how malleable the yoga practice is, and how it's possible for you to take what you've learned and really mold it into what you need it to be in order for you to be the most authentic teacher that you can be. So that will be my kind of input.
Thanks,
And I'm going to go off video now because I have to go back to the course that I'm doing. But I'll keep listening in. So if anyone has questions.
Amazing. Thank you. Is it the handstand course, Fiona?
It is the handstand teacher training.
Enjoy.
So accessible handstand. Here we come.
We'll go back upside down. Bye. Thank you, Fiona. Cool. If anyone's got any questions, save those up.
Yeah,
so
I'll stay online. I'm just going to be walking back to.
Okay, perfect. Rosie, I know you've got a jump as well fairly soon. So over to you. So Rosie teaches a lot of neuroinclusive environment teaching stuff. She runs ADHD Untangled, which is also a podcast. Check it out. But Rosie, over to you.
Hi guys, nice to meet you all. So yes, I'm Rosie, and I'm an ADHD coach and podcast host of ADHD Untangled. And before that, I taught yoga for about, oh God, I think it's been like 10 years since I did my training now or more, and Pilates. And basically, movement completely changed my life, in particular yoga. After I ran a marathon in aid of a friend that I lost, and my life went from complete chaos in terms of addictive behavior and impulsive marriages and failing 8 driving tests, and all of the stuff was going on. And when I found movement, my life started to feel a lot calmer. And because it felt a little bit calmer, and I had built this awareness of, how my mind worked, what struggles I was still facing, I then eventually came to an ADHD diagnosis. And I couldn't believe it. And from that moment on, I've been on a mission to, support the community, and in any way I can turn struggle into strength. And a lot of that is trying to bring, the awareness of ADHD and how we can create more inclusive environments into the wellness world, and in particularly yoga world. So I'm really excited to be part of Hannah's amazing training. And what I'll be sharing is just a lot of first and foremost is what ADHD actually is, and going through some of the science and the myth busting behind it all. And then what you can do as, teachers to support yourself if you've got ADHD, or your clients and the people that you're going to be in the room with. So we're going to deep dive into all different things, and it'll probably be a bit tangled because it always is, but it's going to be lots of fun. So that's it, I think. Unless there's any other questions.
Thanks, Rosie. I wanted to actually, just because you talk about it so well, you like the change in you that you found with yoga in terms of doing vinyasa to music and to a beat, like tying the breath and the beat and the movement together. I know you've talked about it quite a lot. Like you found it incredibly helpful for particularly.
Yeah, I should have pinpointed that. So yeah, basically, I think, as Hannah said, is in my head, I was like, yoga was never going to be something that I would ever be able to do, because I was just such a chaotic brain, and I was always in my head and rushing around, and couldn't sit still. And it wasn't until I stumbled across a 4-beat practice, which I didn't know was a 4-beat practice at the time, that my friend, I think it was like a friend that mentioned it, or someone in my workplace, and when I went to that yoga practice, that changed everything, because other classes that I'd tried before, they were great, but it just felt way too difficult for me as an entrance level. So Rocket combined with the 4-beat practice was, I remember leaving thinking, oh my God, I actually feel calm. I feel like so focused, and I completely hyper focused on 4-beat practice after that, and trained with you, didn't I, Hannah?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and I had no idea that obviously that was what was happening until you guys explained to me that that's what it was. So I truly believe that 4-beat is the practice for an ADHD brain, and especially the kind of ADHD that I am, which I say is the can't stop, won't stop kind of ADHD. Because I think if you chuck them straight into a yin practice, for example, or even like hatha, just a slower practice, I think it could be something that puts them off for life. But the good thing about this is I can now go to sound healing once a week, yin practices. So it's not that it stops there, but I think it's a great entrance point for someone with ADHD who's got quite a busy mind.
Yeah, cool. That's really cool to hear. And yeah, and I guess it's worth sort of explaining as well, because I'm also aware we're going to send this video to people who can come. That just in terms of what 4-beat is, it is a technique for basically teaching any moving yoga. So anything like vinyasa that has a link between the breath and the movement, syncing that up with a beat as well. So it can, and we teach it as a tool that you can use in certain vinyasas if you want to, which links it all together. So that, as I said, there's a lot of psychology behind why that works, and it seems to work incredibly well, particularly for neurodivergent people, particularly for ADHD. So we go into that in the course, but just some people just wonder what the 4-beat thing is and whether it's a sequence, whether it's a species of yoga. But primarily, it is just this technique of being able to tie the way you're moving completely to the breath. So everyone's together, the breath's together, and the movement is together. And it just
Yeah.
holds you in a certain space.
And also your amazing podcast explaining that. We should share that maybe, because it
Oh
explains a
yeah.
lot about that side of things, doesn't it? So that might be
Yes.
quite useful for
Yeah.
everybody.
Good.
I was just trying to think of something else about. I can't believe it's gone now. It's typical. It's gone.
But if you remember, I'll go over to Dan, but if you
I'm on
remember,
brand.
jump back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jump back. Thank you so much. Dan, so I think you're the last of the staff to jump in.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm Dan. So yeah, me and Hannah trained together like 11 years ago. So it's really nice to actually sort of come on board, and I think our sort of backgrounds and journeys have sort of had quite a lot of commonalities in terms of being from sort of a performance background initially, pegging it and running away from the performance world and disappearing off to go for a month. And then sort of coming back teaching and sort of then reacquainting ourselves with this sort of love for, creativity and things again, that I think actually for me teaching gave me the confidence to go back into. So yeah, in a nutshell, so the reason I got into teaching voice for yoga teachers is probably, firstly, there's like a massive gap in teacher training that doesn't sort of acknowledge the fact that actually you do have to talk, you do have to lead groups of people, and there's a lot of things that come up when you start to do that in the room. I remember when I first started teaching, it sort of really hit me when I sort of walked into a room. It's like, oh, not only have I got to remember my sequence and remember what I'm teaching, I've got to actually articulate and talk about things and describe things. And I'm really anxious and I'm really nervous and it's, all these things come into the space as soon as voice comes into the equation. So it wasn't until I sort of regained my confidence after sort of like 5 or 6 years of teaching yoga, sort of being in spaces where I'm talking to groups all the time. They actually went back into drama school and retrained and did like a postgrad, but and then sort of accidentally stumbled on a lot of research into early influences in theatre training and voice work. This is incorporation of Eastern practices such as martial arts and qigong and yoga and things that very much inform the structure of how we work and train people to be aware of a space and how to work with voice and be connected to voice and connected to your body and connected to the people in the room. So I got really interested in that, and it led to me doing like a whole dissertation and sort of thing in sort of, okay, maybe I can take what I know of like qigong and yoga and teaching and find a way to make this a sort of access point or a conduit into voice work, how to free the voice, how to open the body, how to feel comfortable with communicating and sort of take down that sort of barrier that there's sometimes there. I think we've all been there, and you can go into a class sometimes and it feels like the teacher may have taught this class 10 times today, and that might be that they have, or it might be sort of in a sort of survival mechanism that allows them to be able to teach and talk without freaking out. So the more I've sort of taught this over the years, I've been teaching it for about 4 or 5 years now, the more it's become a lot more informed by the nervous system as well, whether that's from my experience as well in terms of how I deal with things like performance anxiety and nervousness, and just generally going to therapy and things like that, and learning a lot more about how and why the body does the things it does and why the blocks come in the way they do when it comes to communicating and facilitating in a space, and a lot of the imposter syndrome and things that can come up as well. But in terms of the style and how we try and work with the voice, just to be clear, it's not going to be like a sort of like a theatre class or something. We're not going to be monologuing in front of each other and doing text work and stuff. It's very much a group dynamic that's sort of, it's a nice combination of group work, but there's elements of one-on-one work in front of the group as well. A bit like Hannah said, in terms of sort of just throwing you in straight away when it comes to teaching is a great idea, because it's out there in the space and it's done, and from there we move on, rather than it be something that we're like, oh, we've done this training and now I'm going to go and teach people. It's a chance for us in the space just to see what comes up, specifically when talking and being heard. So we sort of bring in a little bit of something we've prepared, whether it's a short quote or a bit of a poem or a lyric you like, something, anything that you can just memorize, and we just work with it in the space in various ways. And we do a lot of work with just sort of speaking in front of the group, and then not working one-on-one sometimes in front of the group, but most of it is sort of explorational group work, primarily through embodiment practices. So it's a real fusion of sort of the session that I teach is sort of split up into 3 sections. There's like a release section, which is really about unplugging everything and sort of emptying up and freeing the space, freeing the body, sort of dissolving a lot of the tension and nervousness that can come up, so we can start to maybe plug things back in the right places almost. Because then we'll go into like an alignment section, where not necessarily alignment physically, but aligning with everything that creates voice. So we start to experiment and do lots of somatic practices around lungs and ribs and diaphragm and these parts of our body that are helping us produce and make sound. A little bit of playing with sort of the articulators, all of the things that shape and color when you're talking and stuff, and just really developing a really playful and curious sort of environment that is sort of counterintuitive sometimes, because a lot of the times we've got this idea of what a good speaker sounds like, or a good talker, or how I should be speaking, or how people told me I should be speaking as I grew up, or maybe I don't like speaking because everyone told me to shut up when I was a kid or something. You know, all these things like come up when we're working, and sometimes there is a little bit of an emotional release in the room as well when we're doing this, because we all have different relationships with voice and our right to speak, our right to be heard, our belief in what we're saying, which then takes us into sort of the last section. The day split up into 3, as I said, and I split them up into these little titles called Release, Align, Rise, because the rising section is about bringing energy back into the space, energy and confidence into the voice, continuing to play and using intentional practices like qigong to play with and see how a different relationship with body when we're talking and doing different things with body completely changes the way something comes out, the way we deliver, the way we work with intention. What am I saying? Why am I saying it? Usually influences how you say it rather than thinking, how am I going to say this first, if that makes sense? So that in a nutshell is sort of the voice work. It's very nervous system informed. There's a little bit of anatomy in there. We do learn a little bit about sort of all the larynx and the muscles and the vagus nerve, which connects from the brain. And the first thing it wraps around is your larynx and controls all the muscles and tendons that function through there, and then into the rest of all your vital organs. So yeah, there's a lot of talk around that, and it's a lot of checking in. I've come up with like a little workbook now as well that I can bring into the session, so people's like little journaling prompts. It's really about tuning into what's happening, when it's happening, where I feel it, what comes up when I'm talking in front of groups, or when I'm even thinking about talking or leading a group. And it, for me, I like to just think of it as it creates a really nice starting block and a bit of awareness around your relationship to you and your voice, and then to how that might show up in the spaces going forward. Rather than it being, we're going to come out of this and we're going to be the most confident speakers in the world. It's really just about thinking, oh, this thing comes up when I'm talking, and maybe can we work with this? Can we let it be? And all these different techniques and things that we pick up along the way that can help us dissipate tension, create more freedom, and discover maybe a little bit of extra zhuzh and power in the way we talk and communicate with each other, and the confidence and trust to do it. So yeah, I won't waffle on too much more. I feel like I've waffled on for quite a bit there, but yes, and that is the voice component to the teacher training.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Dan. I mainly am enjoying, I haven't heard the word zhuzh for a really long time. And then I was going to write it and I realized I don't know how to spell it.
No. It comes up a lot in the session, actually. Zhuzh is one of the sounds we work with. So.
Cool. Good. I'm glad. Well, you can tell me if it starts with a Z or a G or a God knows what.
Look it up.
Yeah, we'll think about that. Cool, thank you. I'm going to go over to the students now. I just thought, just very, very quickly before I do, just while you were speaking, I was thinking as well about everything everyone has said. And just a really quick sort of almost like a myth bust before I go over to the students, and then they can talk about what they've been doing and how they found the course, and you can ask them some stuff as well. But the first question that normally gets asked is, am I ready? Is my practice good enough? Do I need to be able to do all the postures? No is the answer. Not no, you're not ready. No, you don't need to be able to do all of the postures. That is totally fine. That it's as long as you generally, if people are asking and they're thinking, am I ready? You're generally ready because you've got the actual foresight to have the thoughts. But as long as, I mean, the immersion week, we practice every day. So we do advise that you get up to practicing maybe sort of 3 times a week in the weeks leading up, just so that you don't sort of get killed off by day 2 or 3 by practicing every day. But beyond that, it really is about coming with curiosity, and you're there to learn all this stuff as well. So as long as you have some sort of practice, that you have an awareness, particularly of the way that we practice, because we want you to be doing the right training. So coming to a class, I'm going to send out a link to a free class, an online one that you guys can do as well. If it's tricky to come in person to anything, just as long as you know the practice in terms of, you know, that you like it mainly. And you have an awareness of the different postures. You don't need to know their names. You don't need to be able to break them down. You definitely don't need to handstand. That question comes up all the time as well. That's also totally fine. And in terms of, as I said, the kind of the moving to a beat element, you also don't have to be musical. People often freak out when they sort of read that. They're like, oh my God, do I need to be a musician? No, you don't, because we teach you all the theory behind it, and we do a lot of counting to 4 basically for a really long time. Jasmine's smiling, but it's too recent for her. So we break it all down, and as I said, it's a tool that you can take on or you cannot. It's totally up to you. Is there anything else I just wrote down in that little myth busty thing? No. Oh, I have, I'll come back to this, but I have written down who am I? Because I realized I didn't actually properly introduce myself. So I'll do that afterwards. But let's go over to, let's start with you, Jenni, actually. So Jenni graduated a few years ago now from the course. And so she's been out in the world teaching and actually covers me a lot. Thank you, Jenni, in the studio, particularly in yoga.
Sure.
Yeah. 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 Over
Yeah.
to you.
Sure. Yeah, as Hannah said, I'm Jenni. So I trained with Good Life 2 years ago, finished in 2023. And honestly loved it. So the training is really multifaceted, as you've probably already gathered from what everyone's been saying. The week in Sur Leela is amazing. It's a really beautiful space. You get to practice and teach in this a big, amazing yoga dome, which you can look up. And one of the other big highlights for me for the training is also the amazing and supportive community that you find and also you become part of. So you become really good friends with the people from your training because you spend so much time together with them, and also you see them at regularly at yoga classes, and you go through this experience together. Um, and it's nice that you find a group of people that want to discuss the intricacies of Trikonasana, triangle pose, or how to get from crow into headstand that your non-yogi friends don't really understand or really care about. So it's nice to find that space where people are as passionate as you probably are. So since completing the training, I've been, as Hannah saying, teaching regularly around Southeast London, which is where I live. So I run a community class in Peckham, and I teach at a few different studios around here. You might have also, yeah, seen me covering Hannah or assisting her Saturday morning rocket classes at Yoga Rise. Like a lot of yoga teachers, I do this alongside my full-time job. I'm also a lawyer like Fiona. Seems like we all need an outlet as lawyers. Um, and so just to reiterate what Hannah was saying, you don't have to want to teach in order to do the training. It's still such a valuable experience for deepening your own practice. But if you do want to teach, it's definitely doable alongside a full-time job, and people have their own way of doing it and making it work for them. So I teach about 3 to 4 classes a week, fit them around my work schedule, or at the moment, because it works best for me, sort of on the weekends. And other people I know from training teach once a week, or maybe more than that, maybe at a studio or at a gym before or after work during the week. So it really depends on what works for you, and you can sort of adjust and work around it. And I think for me, teaching's been such a great balance to my corporate desk job. So it's nice to do something that's movement based, creative, and I'm sharing something that I'm really passionate about. So I find it really rewarding. That was kind of it, really. Yeah, was there anything else that you wanted me to cover, Hannah?
No, I think that's great. I guess it's worth pointing out that you set up that community class yourself with Teddy from your year as well, right?
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
and that's a
Um,
really nice way to sort of get loads of practice under your belt really quickly as well.
yeah, so we set that up as soon as we finished the training because we wanted to be able to keep up practicing teaching. And it's also now become a really nice space. And we're building this like nice community here in Peckham, where we just run it on a donation basis. And yeah, come
Yeah,
along.
cool. And also, am I right that the last 2 years, your year group have all gone on holiday together at the same time of year as we went to Surya
We have, it's sort of our like yoga anniversary. So every March, April, we have like a little reunion, and we go on a little holiday together where we teach each other and relive our Surreal memories.
I love that about it. I love it. And then finally, I guess, how did you find the being out in the world, the auditioning for places, sort of being able to get on cover lists and stuff?
It's definitely helpful that I had help from you guys from Good Life, having that you guys having that network and knowing people in studios. Um, there are a lot of yoga teachers around in London, so it's nice to know people who can put you in touch, and put you forward. Also, it being, I think, going to places where you are where you're assisting or you're also practicing a lot is a nice way to be able to get your foot in the door in those yoga studios.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Jenny. I think we'll do Jasmine and then we'll do Claire. And then if anyone's got any questions, you can then direct them at whoever you want of everyone, really. But let's go to Jasmine. So Jasmine is on the current course and you are 3 weeks away from your final weekend and the final big share. 2 weeks away from the final big share.
Yes, I'm listening a lot to 4-beat playlists, and I get random, very odd looks as I walk across London Bridge in the morning, saying inhale and exhale. So yes, it does become a little bit obsessive on that lead up. So yes, I don't know if I am officially the oldest person to start a teacher training with Good Life, but I'm probably a
Not
bit.
actually. I think you're actually relatively spring chicken compared to some years. Yeah.
Really? Oh wow, crikey. Okay.
I haven't looked at the actual digital information though. I'll have to.
But it just goes to show it's never too late. I was actually a very late comer to yoga. I only actually started practicing 3 years ago, pretty much out of desperation. I'd had 3 hip surgeries, including a total hip replacement in 3 years, hit menopause at the same time, and I couldn't, because I still had an arthritic hip, I couldn't even ride a bike, let alone run for a bus. So I kind of called up the hip surgeon one day and said, "Can I do yoga? It's low impact." And he gave me his blessing with the caution of, as long as you don't do anything silly like try and put your foot behind your head, which I couldn't do beforehand anyway, so it was never going to happen. He was happy to do that, and I fell down this rabbit hole pretty quickly, and fell in love with the practice. And I was very fortunate that at my local gym, one of the teachers really enjoyed playing music. And what I found very quickly was that it was the only time my brain was quiet. So, like Rosie, I am neurospicy, as I like to call it. So I have ADHD. And literally the only time I had that inner monologue is switched off is when I'm actually practicing or doing any kind of movement practice. And I found that that was even more so when I started practicing to music of a specific BPM. So at one point I was, and I still am, going to a particular yoga studio where the founder is also trained by Good Life. And this is actually how I came across Good Life Yoga School, was I got into that practice of practicing to the music, finding flow state, and that's what helps you to survive a 90-minute practice quite easily. And so when the time came for trying to figure out, well, where should I train? They all gave the same advice of, have a look at a couple of different schools, but more importantly, go for somewhere where you enjoy the actual practice as well. And because this particular individual knew how I practiced, knew how important the music side of it was for me, and she had obviously experienced Good Life Yoga firsthand, immediately she said, try this, check out their classes. I went, I was hooked, and I still very much am hooked. So yeah, I haven't looked back. It was a very good choice for me. I was very fortunate to be able to choose between a couple of different places where I had been accepted. And for me, this was hands down a no-brainer. It's also, especially with Fiona doing the accessibility component, because one of my frustrations had been very much sometimes yoga teachers were not as knowledgeable in how to make yoga truly accessible if you had physical limitations. And we all have very unique bodies and skeletons. It's not just about having one leg or one hip. And people didn't always seem to appreciate that. And sometimes I felt I had more knowledge about my hip shape and why I could or couldn't do a particular pose. So for me, having Fiona do the accessibility option was great, especially considered I'd first met her before joining Good Life in a studio changing room and thinking, wow, this person's got one leg. I'd have no excuse. I can do yoga as well. So it's been an amazing journey. The immersion week is full on, very much enjoyable, and I definitely agree with what Hannah said. Make sure you're practicing, I'd say a good 3-4 times a week before you go. Most of my cohort had taken out various intro offers beforehand. So we were literally practicing pretty much every single day on the run up. And as a result of that, we felt strong enough for that particular week. And as Jenni said, having that cohort, always very supportive, the teaching faculty, very supportive as well. People practice not just by going to classes in between those weekends, but also we had a couple of weekends over the summer whilst the weather was nice, where we would meet up to teach each other, to kind of try and embed the practice, try and get our cues right. I think the fact that with this training course that they get you teaching pretty much from day one is amazing. And I think that's a very good thing, because you don't really always appreciate how nerve-wracking it is. Even though you might have been doing the practice yourself for years, all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, some people move and talk and get these words out of their mouths without tripping over their words all at the same time and in front of 60 people. So it's quite good start from the get-go. I think the anatomy component's been really, really great. It's I've turned into an absolute anatomy neek, to the extent that just this week I did a sports exercise fitness first aid course. So for me, it was like great being able to take that knowledge, apply it there, and things of that nature. But yeah, I don't think I came into this process for myself thinking I want to do this so that I can continue to practice safely as I age. And then within a couple of months, I decided I think I'll probably end up teaching. And now I really enjoy assisting. So I've been assisting Hannah, Jenni. I assist at my local gym once a week. And I assist up the road at one of my local studios as well. And on Wednesday, I had my first go and prompt you, where my friend said, "Hey, why don't you teach the Suryas, and then I'll take over." So being able to do that and think, "Oh wow, yeah, I haven't completely cocked that one up," is quite good.
Nice. Amazing rundown. I guess one question for you, how have you found it? Because obviously you're working full time. How have
Yeah.
you found doing the training alongside working?
I think any ADHD person will tell you, if it's something that you genuinely find interesting, you somehow find the time. And I think that's definitely been the case. I think other than the fact that everyone kind of submitted their final assignment at either midnight or on the deadline day or the day after, everyone does seem to find the time. I know I very much arrange which day I go into the office around my yoga schedule. I will look to see what's on at which studio on which day and decide how I want to move and book in accordingly, and make sure that I'm in the office on those particular days. So I make it work. Even if I have to travel for work, I take my mat with me. And with the joys of ClassPass, you can normally find a decent studio wherever you're traveling. So yeah, I just
Cool.
I make it work.
When you said about like arranging the days you went into the office, I thought you meant like you stayed home on the days you were going to practice, and then I realized no, you're saying you're only going to the office so that you can go to yoga. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so it might be a case of like, oh, actually, I feel like going to Hannah's Kindred class at 6:15. If I'm going to do that, it's best that I work from home, because there will
Sure.
always be some kind of snafu, as you know, which will, throw the spanner in the works. So yes, so things like that, but if it's I don't know, a lunchtime session, so Fiona does a very tough class sometimes on a Tuesday afternoon. Then I'll go in on a Tuesday and I'll carve out time. I will book that time in my diary to get my yoga session in, and woe betide anyone who decides to try and put a meeting over that.
Good. I'm going to go over to you, Claire, now, finally. But just to say as well on that, like there is a certain degree of flexibility. We do understand that people are trying to do this a long time, full-time jobs, and sometimes kids and families and all of the things. So, that you can basically, you need to make 80% of the course in order for us to sort of safely graduate you. There are ways of making it up in person if for some reason that becomes impossible, but actually that's quite a lot of hours. I shouldn't say this, that is quite a lot of hours you could miss and still be able to do it. There are you do have to catch up those hours, not hour by hour. So if you miss 10 hours, you don't have to literally do 10 hours, you have to catch up the topics that you were away for. But we do understand that things happen, weddings come up, work stuff is unavoidable, so we put in loads of ways that you can catch up missed material. We have catch up sessions with assistants, a certain amount of stuff you can catch up online as well, and as long as you make those minimums, it's absolutely fine. And when it comes to things like submitting the written assignment that we do also understand that sometimes if it's coming in the same week as like a massive job review or something, that there might be a valid reason sometimes that it needs to come a bit later, which is why I have learned over the last 7 years to put the deadline long before I need it in order to read everyone's work, to allow for the fact that probably a certain percentage of them are going to come in late. Again, I'm probably going to rue the fact that I'm mentioning this up front now, this flexibility.
I'll
But
keep strong.
but just because, yeah, we don't ever want it to be, bearing in mind this whole training is meant to be having this huge focus on accessibility. We don't then want to make it so strict and kind of just preclude people with busy lives from being able to take part, because that would be madness. So talking of people with busy lives, Claire. So Claire
Yeah,
graduated.
and
Oh, breaking up a little bit, Claire. So Claire graduated last year.
oh God, no.
I'm teacher. Oh, sprint.
Oh,
Try
can you
again.
hear me? It's
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. I'll just go to another room. So I am a safeguarding lead at a secondary school. So thinking about that flexibility, actually, there's no way I could have gone to Surya Leela because it was in term time. But we made it work. I had a really nice Saturday with Cecilia, the assistant, which was great. So that are, I think, I found one good life. Hannah was incredibly creative with how she could make it work, which so I felt really supported. And on the flip side of that, with the school holiday, it meant that I got the essay in about 2 months earlier than the deadline, which was like I really enjoyed. And I think I went into the training very much thinking, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to get all these classes immediately. And I did start teaching very quickly afterwards. But then also what I learned was kind of how doing that training deepen my own practice. And for me, that became my own practice became the priority, um, which I didn't know about myself. So it's actually really like I really benefited from having that space over the 7 months to let my priorities change rather than being quite rigid with how I wanted to do it. And yeah, like I say, so my job's really busy, so I realized like, oh, actually I do need to go to class 4 times a week. Um, so the balance I found is that in the school holidays, I do quite a lot of cover. There's this studio at the end of my parents' road where I teach over Christmas. And I think what's been so nice then is actually
not only if I am I physically much more flexible, but actually kind of emotionally and within my mind and within my thinking, I've become so much more flexible, which just makes life a bit easier. So yeah, it was transformational in ways I didn't expect.
Cool. Wow, it's so nice to hear. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that being the other way around as well, of actually coming in really wanting to teach and then having the sort of surprise extra benefit of how helpful it is just to your life in general.
Yeah.
And I think there's actually, so somebody on our current training, Jasmin, I think it was Daria, was saying that she was surprised as well at how much it's just helped her with everything else. Just the stuff that you learn through the philosophy, through the ethics, through just the discipline of the practice as well. So it sort of was I think, a kind of a surprise to her as well, that it was also quite useful just in her job,
Yeah.
in her other job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, for some people, you start experiencing that before you embark upon the training. So when I think about the rabbit hole, that
Mm.
was my journey. And I think with the training, it only made the hole a bit wider and a bit deeper, if I'm honest. Um, so that it certainly kind of has, exposed my need for practicing different modalities. So for me, I like Iyengar for the refinement, for really drilling down, learning. And then 4-beat is my escapism. It's my physical moving meditation that at the moment I've got a bit of an injury and I'm finding it really, really difficult not practicing as frequently during the week, but there are other kind of movement modalities which reinforces the need to cross train everybody. But yeah, no, it really has been transformational. And I think one of the things I was actually a bit concerned about at the beginning was, having spoken to other people who'd gone through their 200 hours, was you end up learning stuff about yourself.
Mm.
And then because you're then also exposed to more of the practice, to more meditation, to the philosophy, you start questioning things. You start questioning things about yourself, and then there is the potential to be wondering, well, how is that going to impact my relationships with you know, my friends, my colleagues, family members? Is this taking up too much of your time? Does it make you a better or worse partner if you devote so much more time to your yoga journey or not? And things of that nature. But I think these are things that are good questions to ask of oneself. But I think for me, it's just turned out that it's definitely something that brings a lot to my life, to my own sanity, not just from a physical perspective, but in terms of calming the mind, stilling my mind, being able to, it helps with your menopausal symptoms, so being able to sleep better, just all around, it's just been tick, tick, tick.
Nice. Lovely. Yeah, and I guess just before we open it up to any questions anyone has, that's a really important point. I think things do come up on the training because you are really diving into yourself in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways. And I think that's why we have so much emphasis on sort of the understanding of what's happening with meditation and with moving meditation as well, just so that you can psychologically and to a certain extent with the neuroscience that we bring in as well, biologically or neurobiologically, sort of understand what happens. But also, we really try very hard to create a really safe container for it. And that's why the community is why having as much support with all the staff and all of the tools that we try to give you as well, because most of us on the teaching team have experienced trainings that haven't actually felt that safe. And so we are very, very big on making sure that everyone is okay and that everyone is being contained. And I sort of have issues with the way the word safe space is sort of bandied about, but it is the most relevant phrase. It really does need to be for everyone. So we make a really sort of big point of ensuring that that does happen, which is why we have the trauma-informed yoga aspect of things as well to sort of bring it in. And then lastly, before the questions, I'll do my introduction because I realized I didn't do it at the start. Hi, I'm Hannah. Should have said that to begin with. And I set up the yoga school many years ago now in like end of 2018, beginning of 2019, along with Marcus. And we've been teaching a lot of 200 hours. The first few years we did 2 a year, which was absolutely bonkers. And we vowed never to do it again after, yes, Dan, that is the correct expression. Do not think that. No, it was madness. So thankfully, then we decided to do 1 a year after that. I trained, as Dan said, with Dan in Goa in like 12 years ago. 12, no, 11, something like that, many years ago. And I've been practicing a long time before that. My background is both also history, actually, like Fiona, I did a history degree. And then, but I grew up as a dancer, which I always am hesitant to say on these calls because it makes people think that you need to be able to like split your limbs in 90 directions to be able to do yoga, which you definitely don't. But that was my upbringing, mainly in ballet. And then I also went to drama school, did the musical theatre thing for about 12 years, also dancing with that, a lot of voice stuff. It is very stressful, as Dan said. There is a lot of rejection, going back to the ADHD, rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria situation. And so I found yoga actually when I was at drama school, when I was quite young, and it was the most helpful thing. And kept it up through all of those years of both auditioning, and I'm also a writer, so I was working for the BBC at the same time because insane, and trying to fit those two careers at the same time was quite intense. So yoga really was my sort of savior out of it. And I've always tended towards anxiety. I had a lot of panic attacks as a kid, and yoga and meditation has been the most useful thing, along with Qigong, actually, to also echo what Dan said, finding that sort of very grounding practice. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you. I know you've got to go. And so a lot of my initial training was in Vinyasa, along with Dan. And then also, like Dan, I've added a lot of extras in since then, Qigong and Yin and specific meditation trainings, particularly mindfulness meditation. I'm also a psychotherapist. So I'm in the middle of a master's at the moment, but I'm working clinically, mainly with dancers and musicians, actually. I also have that background and a lot of neuroscience of mental health. I did a master's in a little while ago as well. But I've always very much focused on it through embodiment, and also music, because I also grew up as a musician and trained at the Royal Academy of Music. So sort of bring all of that into this sort of big ball that has become the way that I now tend to teach. Always informed by all of the psychology and bringing in all of the aspects of embodiment and the different practices to try to make something that works for as many people as possible. Back to the accessibility thing. So good. I've got me out there now. Any questions before we go? Because I know you guys have listened to lots of talking in the last like hour and 10 minutes. So if you have any brain left and are not completely like pinned against your walls by information, just let us know if there is anything you would like to ask anyone who's still here.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Hi. Where in London, when it's the once a month session, where is that based?
Yeah, so they're in Peckham. So they're in
Okay.
Southeast, in Peckham, in the Bussey building. If anyone knows where Yoga Rise is, it's literally one floor above. There's a photography studio called Sunset Studios, which are lovely big white open spaces with big windows. And they're in there for the 7 months back in London.
Amazing.
Good question.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
Anyone else? Just stunned faces. Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, guys. And thank you so much for everyone who joined to talk about stuff. Obviously, if you have any questions that come to you after this, even while I'm talking now, you're very welcome to interrupt me, please do. But just you can pop me an email. As I said, I'll send out an email later today, which has a link to a video that you can, an online practice that you can do just for anyone who hasn't experienced the idea of the sort of 4-beat thing of moving in time to a beat. so that you can have a go and see how you feel. Please do come visit us, any of us, in studios if you want to come say hi and come practice. And I will send a video out of this as well, so you can just sit through it again, don't know, find any bit of information that you want. And if you have any questions, you can just reply to that email.
Can I interrupt you?
Of course, yes, please go.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kati. I'm actually joining you from Hungary.
Oh, hi.
Long way. So I have been planning to do a yoga teacher training for a while. And this year I had a lot of illnesses, and I currently have a frozen shoulder. And I was wondering, like, this is why I pushed my yoga training from September. And I was wondering if it doesn't clear up by the time that the teacher training begins, would you be able to accommodate me not being actually able to do a lot of stuff with my shoulder? I mean, with accessibility being a big subject, I guess it's not out of the question, but I just wanted to make sure that it's okay for me to plan to join you, even if this doesn't clear up by then.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you know what it is, I mean, it sounds like a really annoying thing for somebody to say when you have an ongoing injury like that, but injuries really are the best teachers when it comes to
Oh yeah, I know. I am experiencing that every single hour.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we've had people on the course. Was it last year? It was Claire, was it? Oh no, Claire's gone. One year we had somebody who couldn't use their wrist for 6 months of the course, which obviously in a vinyasa is also, like shoulder, it's quite integral in the bit. And that was incredibly, they learned loads of different modifications of sun salutations to be able to, for themselves, but also to potentially be able to add into their teaching repertoire as well. So absolutely, yes, you would be so welcome still, because as we've been saying, that idea of being able to work out how to do the practice when you have something that is stopping you being able to do it, is really a huge part of the training. So
yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, I also wanted to ask you about the scholarship. I missed the first 15 minutes of your session today, so maybe you talked about it. But maybe if you could mention the ways that maybe I can get financial help, considering that I need to fly into London to take all the sessions. But I'm totally willing to do it. I'm really, really amazing stuff that you said about this training. So I'm getting more and more excited. But I need to make this work financially as well. So I would be interested to hear about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I will again, since you can see all of this sort of on our website as well, that I'll send a link to. But basically for the scholarship place, which is that's all of training fees are covered. Then we also have 4 bursary places, which are 50% off. And the way that you apply to them, we don't means test, because we don't want to put people through that. What we essentially do is just get you to write us a little paragraph saying why you'd like to do the training and what you would like to do with what you learn, whether that's for yourself or whether that's to pass it on to somebody else. And that is the application process. And then we ask you to get that in by the end of the year, so by like the 30th of December. And then we make the choices then, which is always horribly hard, and we usually end up just giving out more bursaries than we meant to because we can never decide. We'd make that decision in January. And then we also offer payment plans. So the other thing is that whether you're on a bursary or whether you're paying the full amount, we also offer payment plans that you can then spread out over quite a lot of time, just to make it more affordable as well.
But like how long of a time? Like how does it work with the payment plan?
So usually we like it, if possible, it's paid up by graduation, so by the November. So for instance, if you decided you really wanted to do this and you joined up in the next couple of months, we would get you to pay a deposit, whatever is affordable for you, and then you would split it over basically almost a year to pay it off by next November. We have had some exceptional circumstances where people have had to make it a little bit longer than that. The only thing then is, generally, depending on how long it is, if it's just a month or 2, generally we then will give you your final certificate once you've made the final payment. If it's going to be much longer than that, then we just have a conversation about it basically and work out what's realistic time wise. But usually the general thing is to spread them out. The earlier you sign up, the better, in terms of having more months to pay it, if that makes sense, to finish it by then. But we're always willing to have the conversation for afterwards. And with bursaries, obviously it's less then, and that's the same with bursaries. Generally, they are paid up by the day that you graduate, which will be like next November, end of next November.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Even more excited because I can actually then make it work, whatever way it works. Yeah. Thank you.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Any questions before we evaporate out of this ether? Cool. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you all so much.